Welcome, everybody, to the Nightly News Podcast. This is Professor Paul Miller, and I'm here with someone who I have not had on in an extended period of time. I don't think you've been on since prior to the pandemic. Is that true, Miss Sandy Box?
I'm just trying to remember. I thought we might have thrown one in there, but I could be wrong. You know, time just keeps on passing by.
I totally understand. So Sandy is the executive director of the Central Penn College Education Foundation, and we got a lot to talk about. You have, obviously, your annual golf tournament coming up on August 13th, and we also have the scholarship coming up, the scholarship application coming up this term, so we'll talk about both of those things. Also being joined here by Nightly News Secretary Nash McCumsey. Nash, welcome back to the show.
Good to be back.
And Nash is in his final term here at Central Penn College, but Nash has also been interning over the spring and the summer terms with Sandy in the Education Foundation. So Nash, I wanted to start off our discussions today talking a little bit more about some of your experiences thus far with the Education Foundation in your internship.
So it's been a lot of fun. I've had a lot of interesting opportunities presented to me during this internship, and I'll tell you, it's not something that you can get in the classroom. It's something that you can really only get through job experience, which is, of course, the point of the internship at Central Penn. But what's unique about my option is that it's directly through the college. What's nice about that is that it seems to be already structured for students. Not a lot of companies can offer something like that. Additionally, I get to work, of course, with Sandy, a very rewarding opportunity, and it's been a lot of fun to be able to point students in the direction. Of course, our goal is to make sure that students have the funding that they need. That's a goal that I enjoy getting behind and helping with Sandy push towards.
Well, and something that I know that you had actually kind of your first foray into the Education Foundation is we did a couple of different occasions where you were sitting in the lobby and educating students walking by about the Foundation Scholarship. Maybe that's something you can do again this term.
Right. It's definitely something that needs done, too. I've noticed, of course, I've gotten to learn a lot about the Foundation Scholarship itself. It's surprising how many students aren't aware of it per semester, that all of this opportunity is available for them to be able to pay back a lot of their college. So being able to educate students on that is very rewarding, I'd say.
And it's certainly not for lack of trying, Sandy. I mean, you put out everything, email, podcast, you're on the Nightway. I mean, all these different avenues. But for as many different platforms as we have, sometimes that makes it more challenging, because now when we have a single message that needs to go out, there are some students that don't check their email. There are students that don't listen to the podcast. There are students that might not even be aware that the foundation exists. And, you know, I personally am one of the champions of this. I require that all of my students do the application, and that's one way that, and I've gotten so much great feedback. Sometimes I get people who are like, well, what if I don't need it or my education's paid for or what have you? I'm like, still do it. Right. Like, at least go through and engage with the process, because the benefits for the 90% of students who aren't in that situation well outweigh, you know, you having to do an assignment that basically if you turn in, you get full points for.
Absolutely, absolutely. And the funny thing is, you're right. We advertise it everywhere. It's on bulletin boards. It's on Blackboard. It's on emails to the students. It's on in the bathrooms. If you stop by the business office, there's handouts there. There's handouts in the Learning Center, as well as financial aid. So, yeah, I encourage students to apply, even if they don't really need the money. I don't know how many students.
Money?
Right, that's what I'm thinking. It's like, who doesn't need some money? We all do that, and if it just lowers the amount that you have to pay back in loans, that in itself is worth a half an hour to answer the essay question. I mean, I'm not sure what job you're going to get into, but if it pays more than $500 for a half an hour's worth of work, that's a job that I want to sign up for.
Oh, I'm right there with you.
Absolutely, absolutely.
You know, one of the things, and how I basically work with a lot of my classes, especially my lower level classes and when I teach Com 101, is I take an entire day. Now, this isn't necessarily, and I'm sure I could figure out a way to make it one of the objectives and work it into one of the objectives of the course. But what I do is the week that I introduce this assignment, I go through paying for college. One of the biggest discussions in our country politically at large at this point is what to do about the costs of higher education. And of course, this is not a political podcast. I'm not going to get into anything beyond that other than saying that it is a major issue in our country. The issue, though, Sandy, to me personally, is that not enough students look for other ways to fund their education outside of student loans, whether that be federal work study, in which we've got, I don't want to say dozens, but we have multiple positions here on campus that are unfilled from federal work study, which can also help you pay for your education. Scholarships. Sandy, during our last foray into scholarships, which would have been in January.
Correct.
What percentage of the Central Penn students applied for this Education Foundation Scholarship?
Well, that's the strange thing. Okay, so at that point in time, we had around 900 students enrolled. We received 155 applications.
Which I do remember you saying last time was way up from last summer during the pandemic.
Correct, yeah. Oh, during the pandemic, the numbers were dismal, I have to say. And I think that has to do with the fact that students weren't on campus. They didn't see the reminders. They didn't see it when they shut the bathroom door behind it. They didn't see it on the bulletin boards when they're walking through. Maybe they didn't see it in their Blackboard announcements or their emails because they were so zoomed out and teamed out and whatever the case may be, so they kind of overlooked it.
But 155 students is for my, so I know I've been as part of the scholarship selection committee for at least the last 3 or 4 years.
Correct.
That's got to be one of the higher numbers.
It is one of the higher numbers. I mean, we did really well. A couple years ago, we had like 200 students that applied, but that's in the fall term, and that's usually the heavier term that we for applications that we get. So I was very pleased with 155 applications during the January, winter term. What's really impressive is that out of 155 applications, 136 students received a scholarship.
So you're talking about darn close to 90%.
86.7%.
I'm sorry, I can't do that kind of math in my head.
Yeah, so it's like, oh my gosh. And those scholarships ranged anywhere between $500 and $2,000. And that's for that term. Now, it could be split maybe over 2 terms if that's makes a better financial makeup for the student. But it can be given in 1 term, it can be given over 2 terms. But, I mean, the amount of time and energy that you had to put in to answer a question about yourself, I mean, that's what it is. It's about yourself. Can't get it wrong. The only thing that you can get wrong is if you don't answer the question, if your grammar is terrible, if your spelling isn't checked, those kind of things. But as long as you answer the question, really, again, it's nothing that you can't get it wrong.
Let me just ask one question here. So taking a baseline of, and over my 8 years, this number obviously fluctuates up and down,
Right.
but if we're looking at a baseline of around an average of 1,000 students from term to term
Right.
over the last, call it 5 years, the best was 200. So
Correct.
the best case scenario was only about 20% of our students
Absolutely.
engaged in this exercise.
Right, which is kind of strange because considering that almost 90% of our students require some form of financial aid to complete their college degree. Well, this is financial aid that you don't pay back. I mean, this is the best kind of financial aid that you're ever going to get, scholarships that you don't pay back.
And Nash, correct me if I'm wrong, but every time I talk about this in class, I talk a lot about how when you take out, let's just call it $4,000. I'm just throwing an arbitrary number out there. $4,000 isn't what you pay back. You know what I mean? Because of interest that goes along with it.
Exactly.
And so when you're getting that $500, $1,000, $2,000 award from the Education Foundation, you're actually in turn getting much more than that because it's also saving you the interest payments as well. So even a $500 award could end up saving you $800, $1,000 down the line.
It is one of the fastest and most immediate ways to sort of start paying back your education. You can do it right now, and there's plenty of opportunity available.
I think that, and I almost feel bad because, Nash, I'm sure you've heard, since you're now in your final term, I'm sure you've heard me multiple times talking about this. And sometimes, Sandy, when I have the same students in class multiple terms in a row, I do kind of feel bad because there are some things that I cover in almost all my classes, and this is most certainly one of them.
Right.
I just think in a general sense, and this is just my opinion here, that students don't do enough to think of ways to afford their education through, even if it's the easiest way is to look at internal scholarships like what you do. Obviously, there are other scholarships, there are grants, there's federal work study, there are other ways to finance your education than just taking out loans for everything. All of that being said, I want to come back to your point, Sandy, that 90% of our students are taking some type of financial aid out, but only at best 20% of our students are doing this application. And my goal is, like I said, I always have you on the podcast. I'm really pushed Nash to work with you so he could help you get the word out as well about it. And it's just, I want to see that number come up.
I would love to see the number come up. Our goal would be that 50% of the students apply. That's my goal. That 50% of the students apply, and I'm able to award 75 to 80% of those applicants a scholarship. That would be I would be thrilled if that were the case. I always laugh, and this isn't the first year. I've been doing scholarships at the previous college that I worked at and here for the last 19 years. I work so hard.
That's literally your entire job.
I'm telling you, my whole job is to work so hard to give money away. It's like, this shouldn't be this difficult. And I think sometimes when students hear the word essay, they're like, oh, I can't write an essay. It's an essay about you.
And it's not like
it's a story.
And it's not like you're asking for a 20-page paper here.
No. And maybe I should change the word from being an essay to your story.
Right.
Maybe that's what I should do. Maybe then that wouldn't scare.
How about a giant poster on the door of your office that says "Free Money"? I think maybe that would be helpful.
That might do it.
But so, Sandy, before we get off of this topic,
Yes.
I want you to tell us, just so we can wet the whistle, because this
Yes.
is going to be available during the month of August.
Correct.
So this will be coming up here very, very soon. But just to wet the whistle of all of our listeners out there who might want to apply and should apply,
Right.
what is the question we're going to be answering this year?
Okay, so just to remind you, yes, it opens up on Monday, August the 2nd. It closes Friday, August the 27th. So you have, 4 weeks to get it done. I strongly suggest that you listen to the question, read the question, write your answer, save it, review it again. But anyway, here's the question. It's a tough one this time, guys. Okay, so what aspects of your life have changed since the pandemic started? How will those changes affect your educational journey? And do you feel your chosen field or profession has changed as well? So it's a 3-part question, but it's just your impression. What do you think? How has your story changed from March of 2020?
2020.
Yeah, see, it's been so long, I can't even remember. How has your life changed, your story changed since March of 2020 till now?
Well, I'll tell you, it sounds like a question that pretty much everyone should have an answer to of some kind.
Absolutely.
I mean, faculty, staff, everyone has had some sort of change that has occurred, I'd say, since the pandemic in their profession, everything.
One thing I might suggest, this is perfect for a 5-paragraph essay. When you have an introduction, you've got 3 questions to answer, a paragraph each, and a conclusion. You could probably write a fantastic essay in about 500 to 700 words.
Right.
Now, I know that you do have a minimum word limit on there, and I always want to bring this up. That's there for a reason.
It is there because, some people might answer the question, okay, what aspects of your life have changed since the pandemic started?
Nothing.
Or how will these changes affect your educational journey? I don't know. Do you feel your chosen field or profession has changed as well? Yes. Okay, that does not answer anything. That answers the question, but that doesn't give us any information on you, the student.
And also, too, you have it relatively low at 200 words.
Right.
You don't want 200 words, though.
I don't want 200 words. I want more than 200 words, but if you can answer the question succinctly and thoroughly in 200 words, I'll take it. But at the end of 200 words, if I'm still sitting there going, well, what did you say? Then you didn't do the job. That's it. You have to do the job. You have to answer the question. Your job that day is to answer the essay. That's your job.
I love it. Nash, any tips? So this is something that you've done every single term since you've been here, and you've been awarded multiple scholarships. What are some of the tips you can offer to students out there listening?
So the best thing to do is remember, first of all, it's my job to be, involved with advertising this. I'm absolutely encumbered with this advertising. You have to remember it on your own a little bit harder than I would. So August this year is when we're going to be doing it. If you remember to sign up, that's half the battle. As for writing the essays, and it seems to be this way this year as well, they're always something related to your journey at Central Penn, and everyone has had a journey to explain. If you can put that journey down onto words, you'll get money. You will. It's the opportunity is too there for students to ignore. I really do think that the essays are something that everybody can do and everybody should do here. This isn't something just for communication students. It's not something for just, the students who are in desperate need. Everyone should be interested in writing this essay. It makes the essays more interesting to read, I'm sure, if there's more competition, and it makes it more it makes it better for students who are then able to pay back their loans.
Well, again, please make sure you go to foundation.centralpenn.edu. That's going to be open from August 2nd to August 26th?
27th.
August 27th. So August 2nd through August 27th. Well, before we get you out of here, obviously we have some, not so much news. This has been promoted for quite some time. The 50th, the golden anniversary, if you will, of the Central Penn College Education Foundation Golf Open will take place on Friday, August 13th at Rich Valley Golf. So what are you going to have on tap for us this year? You managed to have a successful golf tournament in the middle of the pandemic, which was much needed.
Yes.
But how are things going to be back to normal this year, or what are some of the special things you have on tap?
Well, we still have a few changes that will be made, even though the CDC and the government has lifted the guidelines. What we found is that last year, some of the changes that were made because of the pandemic, people really enjoyed. So we'll still have, we have the pretzels, we have hot dogs, we have, good food, good fun, all for a good cause, a great cause, as a matter of fact. We have a lot of golfers signed up this year. We have some alumni teams that are, going to compete against one another to see what year wins out in the golf course. Yeah, it's 50th year. On Friday the 13th, I always tell people, what could possibly go wrong on Friday the 13th?
Let's hope that the weather cooperates.
The weather has cooperated ever since I think I've been doing this. And as a matter of fact, somebody reminded me that the last 2 years that we've had the golf tournament, about 5 minutes after it's over, the skies open up and torrential downpours happen.
I remember that last year. I remember driving away like, oh my gosh, we got so lucky because we ate outside too.
Absolutely.
And so it wasn't just get off the course and go inside.
Right.
We ate outside last year,
right.
which was awesome how that was set up too. But it was always so interesting to me the last 2 years, like you said, that the weather cooperated through the tournament. And then as soon as we left, it got really ugly. And I mean, that is the danger with doing it in August. But we got to have golf playing weather.
That's right. We have to have golf playing weather. And the fact of the matter is, it really is, it's the only fundraising event that we hold all year. Now, we do fundraising throughout the year, but it's the only event that we do. And all of these funds then go into what we call unrestricted, so that as needs arise for our students throughout the year, we can automatically go to those funds and go, oh, okay, we need this. We need scholarships for this type of student or that type of student, or textbook money needs to be made available. So this event allows us to raise funds for that type of almost like an emergency need as they arise. So I'm really excited about it. So far, we have 28 teams signed up, which is 6 more than we had last year.
Wow.
Yes, very excited. And several new companies and organizations have joined in with us this year. So I think it's going to be a great day on the golf course. Now, I've been doing golf outings I think this is probably my 20th year.
Okay.
I know nothing about golf. I always think that's so funny. I don't know the difference between a putter and a wedge and a wood. I don't know.
I can show you.
Yeah, I don't know. But I do know that I know how to throw a party so that when my golfers are out on the course, they're having a good time. They're raising friendships and networking, and all for the good cause, which is to raise scholarship dollars for our students at Central Penn College. It's a win-win.
As an aside, Sandy, I've golfed in many golf tournaments in my life, and I'm not even just saying this because you're in the room with me. Yours are the most fun.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
The way that you've got raffles, you've got people out on the course, we've got hole-in-one competitions, beverage cart, food. While we're out on the course, I mean, you think of everything.
I try. I like to make certain that everybody has a good time. That's my goal. The outcome is that we raise funds. My goal is that everyone has a good time and walks away and says, I can't wait till next year. That's my goal.
Awesome. Nash, and one of the big things as part of your internship is not only the promotion, and like we said earlier, hopefully you're able to not only just promote the foundation scholarship, but maybe the golf event as well. You've never been to the golf tournament yet.
No, I have not.
So what is it that you're kind of envisioning and anticipating here?
Well, I'm in much the same boat as Sandy. I know very little about golf, but she's training me on how to throw a party, and that's sort of what I'll be looking into doing. I'll be helping her, move equipment, and also for a lot of my term last time, I was for my internship, I was advertising this golf tournament. A lot of the weekly Facebook posts were around that golf tournament. This is definitely the Super Bowl of the Education Foundation. We really kind of focus on this effort in particular because it is our only event. But there's another thing that I'll be looking at while we're at this event. Something we discussed a little bit before. There's going to be a lot of different businesses that will be attending this foundation golf open. So as a student, I mean, I'm interested in finding a job, right out of the gate. There's going to be a lot of opportunity there for that. I'll be doing my own personal networking, meeting with a lot of the businesses, shaking hands. It's going to be very exciting for that reason as well.
A piece of advice. I've done the same thing at tournaments before, not necessarily this one because I have a job.
Right.
Don't come on too strong, but at the same time, if they have business cards, if not, have a notes open in your phone or have a small notepad to write down their name and follow up with them on LinkedIn or try to get their email after the fact because you already have an in with them. Hey,
right.
I worked with the foundation. You support the foundation. Let's talk.
Right.
So don't do, and trust me, you have a great personality. So I know that you're not going to overstep. But at the same time, make those connections and then follow up with them after the fact. Mm-hmm. Well, I must say, Nash, I'm very pleased with your progress so far. You're going to be interning through the golf tournament. Hopefully the golf tournament are your final hours, and then you're also going to stay on and volunteer for the rest of the term as well. So you're going to have a wonderful resume builder, and obviously you can't have a better advocate here than Sandy.
Right, I'd have to agree, certainly.
And Sandy, of course, I'm going to do everything possible to promote the scholarship application.
Yes, please.
And of course, I'll be out on the golf tournament.
I look forward to it.
I doubt that we're going to win, although I want to say that we won
You
one of
guys
the
won-
flights like 2 years ago. Which
That's what I was going to say.
No thanks to me, but I might have sunk a putt or two. But it's always a blast, and of course we're there to support something that I so passionately believe in. So I thank you for all of your efforts on both of these fronts.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. And I appreciate the time to be able to come out and tell my story.
Well, I want to thank Nightly News Secretary and Education Foundation intern Nash McComsey for coming in here today. Nash, thank you for what you do for the foundation. And, obviously we'll try to have you on again this term, but certainly wish you the best of luck after graduation as well.
Thank you very much for having me.
And Sandy, always so much fun to have you on the show. And so I
you.
appreciate your time as well.
Thank you very much.
All right, stay tuned for one of the produced by Mr. Miller spots about the Education Foundation golf tournament with all of the information that you're going to need to be a part of it. We'll be right back. Are you ready to hit the links for a good cause?
The golden anniversary of the annual Golf Open for Scholarships is here. The 50th Central Penn College Education Foundation Golf Open will take place at the beautiful Rich Valley Golf Course on Friday, August 13th.
This is the only annual fundraising event hosted by the Education Foundation to raise scholarship dollars for students.
Did you know? Many Central Penn students face the same challenge, meeting the financial costs of higher education.
Our goal at the Central Penn College Education Foundation is simple: encourage giving so that more deserving students can graduate from Central Penn and make their own contributions to society.
Imagine the potential that will be unleashed if we make a college education possible for more deserving students.
Join us for the Central Penn College Education Foundation Golf Tournament on Friday, August 13th. Contact Sandy Box at foundation@centralpenn.edu for more details. Welcome, everybody, to the Nightly News Podcast. This is Professor Paul Miller, and I'm so honored to be sitting in today with a member of my hometown's Borough Council, Sara Agerton. Sara is a Borough Council member in the Mechanicsburg Borough, and she was here today as a guest speaker in my class, decided to sit in with us on the Nightly News Podcast. So, Sara, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Of course, and we're going to talk much more with you about, what got you into politics and what does it mean to be a borough council member, and certainly some of the things that you've been, able to do in your time as borough council. Also joined by Nightly News Secretary Nash McCumsey. Nash, it's a pleasure to have you on the show.
Pleasure to be on once again, Paul.
And interestingly enough, we just got out of a class where we talked about how you have been a little bit more engaged with the local political process, so I'll be sure that we touch on that here before too long. Well, Sara, I want to start off with probably a question that you get pretty frequently is, you're not a career politician. Your background is in social work. And so what was it that got you into the political spectrum? What was it about politics that was so interesting to you?
Well, as any good politician was, I was tricked into it by having coffee with a recruiter. A local candidate recruiter had said, "Hey, you want to meet me for a coffee? Let's talk about Mechanicsburg and what you think about it." So after we had that conversation, she had said, "Have you ever thought about running for office?" And my initial reaction was, yeah, maybe. But after we continued our conversation, I knew that I was going to play a role in Mechanicsburg. And I decided as a social worker, as a social justice warrior, that it was my time to give back to my community. I do a lot of volunteering, but it was really important to me that I gave back to my community. So that's what got me into the race.
I think one of the ways that I first found out about you is, obviously, I live in Mechanicsburg, and you were always just so passionate about supporting small businesses, which, again, Nash will tell you, one of the things that I just go on and on about in our classes is how important it is to support our local businesses, and even more so now during the pandemic, where a lot of these small businesses have had some severe issues with even just being able to stay open in whatever capacity that they have been. What was it about the Mechanicsburg small businesses that spoke to you, or you'd also mentioned that you've been a resident for a while? What is it like to see all these wonderful small businesses opening back up?
Mechanicsburg is a bustling place for new businesses. Even through the pandemic, I've been surprised at how well everyone has been doing. But that is a lot of efforts on the Downtown Partnership, on Borough Council, and creative business plans. So for me, when I decided to build my family in Mechanicsburg, one of the things that I wanted was access to easy restaurants, to shops, those types of things. I love the idea of living in a community where you can walk to things that you want to be part of. So having the restaurants expand, having, a new soap place in Mechanicsburg.
Love Glitz.
Glitz is my favorite place. We have a creperie. We have an Italian bakery. I mean, you just can't go wrong. And these things are opening up during times of COVID. So, those places are exactly what small towns need. We need to be able to walk to places. We need to support these small businesses. These people work hard every day with great food, great products, and without people honoring and going to their shops, they close. So I think that's been one of the great things, is being part of the borough and being the liaison to Downtown Partnership, is just supporting small business and watching them thrive and be able to change during, unprecedented times.
You mentioned, and you've mentioned several times now, the Downtown Mechanicsburg Partnership. So can you tell us what that is? And you said that you're the liaison to that. Can you maybe explain a bit more about what that is, so our listeners can kind of get a sense of what that means?
Absolutely. They are a nonprofit group that their sole purpose is to support small businesses downtown and to support the way it looks, the feel of it, the facade of our downtown. So they are integral on partnering different businesses together, doing events, raising funds. They have some big dreams for downtown Mechanicsburg, with, eventually having some sound stages, some food trucks that are permanent. They have a vision. And with that vision, they are just a really big backbone to our small businesses.
I'm trying to think, do they get grants from the state in order to fund their mission?
So a little bit of grants, a little bit of fundraising. I know that because of the things that have been going on, that C word we won't mention again, a lot of their events have been canceled or put on pause, but they do raise funds through a lot of different events. So they'll do an art and wine walk. They do a chocolate walking tour.
Mugs and music. Yeah, lots of fun stuff. They're very creative with their events and getting all of the businesses to partner and participate. So I was very lucky, and then I want to go to Nash and chat. So I was very lucky. Part of what I did and I'd love to share this stuff with you. I took a photography class as part of my PhD last year, and we were supposed to come up with an artist statement. And what I did was I featured 7 different local businesses in Mechanicsburg, and for each of them, I made a 3-shot. So there was 3 different sort of panels. I did Cristiano Winery, Smokin' Pickles Glitz, Recordsmith, Razor's Edge. I did a couple of other ones that I don't want to just have dead air. But I went and I took a picture of the owners doing what it was that they do. I took a picture of the sign out in front of the store, and then I took a picture of the owner standing in front of the store, and they were so cool. And my professor said, why don't you reach out to the Downtown Mechanicsburg Partnership and do a little, photo display or something like that. And so maybe that's something that we'll have to do. But really cool. And because, again, I'm so active and adamant about supporting small businesses and about how much I love my town, because a lot of the photos, like other assignments that we were doing, were just of Mechanicsburg. The little train museum, all types of different things all around town. And my professor was like, it's obvious that you've got such a love for the town of Mechanicsburg. Let's work that into your artist statement. So I love small businesses. I love my hometown. It just worked out perfectly. So I was so happy that I had that opportunity. Oh, I also did the Jumpers shoe service. Mm-hmm. They're right across the street from me. They're a bunch of characters, but it was such a really cool thing. And basically what I did was I got everybody printed off a canvas, and I took it into them and said, hey, I did the coffee shop.
Oh, awesome. There's some good coffee down there.
Yeah, they're great people. So I really enjoyed having that opportunity to get to actually meet these people of the businesses and tell them a little bit about my story, because it was, telling them how important small businesses were to me. So, well, on a different subject here, Nash, I want to bring you in. So part of one of the things that we're doing for our class is I'd ask everyone to attend a local governmental meeting. And so Nash is from the Newport Perry County area and attended a local borough council meeting. So tell us a little bit more about what that experience was like.
Sure. So the first thing that I did whenever I was wanting to go to this meeting was I wanted to figure out where the building was, because I didn't even know where to start. I decided to, drive around town, and I found out that my borough building is attached. It's about half the size of the Brothers Pizzeria that's right next to it. So it's really not this grandiose, massive government building. It's, hardly bigger than a classroom. And when I went in, the people attending this meeting were 5 council members, a secretary, a leading council member, family, and 1 press person, and me, the sole non-interested public, as it were. And it was all really just a fascinating experience, because the things that these people were discussing, one of the things we discussed in the meeting was going over all of our sewer work in the town. And we're talking about a massive project here. These less than 10 people in this room are going to be deciding the future of the entire borough of Newport. And it's really fascinating, because you imagine that decisions like these are so far out of the public reach, and yet not only am I able to see these decisions as a random public citizen, but they actually asked for, my takes. They, as of course required as part of public comment, they need to know what I have to say about it. And I'm thinking it's like anybody else, that's got some free time on a Wednesday night can come out and do this. It really just sort of contextualized it for me. It's like, this is all very real and easily you can participate in this.
And that's the thing, too, and that's where I wanted to talk with you, Sarah. I mean, even when meetings were in person, how many, in Mechanicsburg, a little bigger than Newport, but how many people were showing up to these meetings in person?
So we had our regulars, and there's only a few regulars that come, and, that's always the most disappointing thing. One of my platforms is ease of information and making sure that people knew when the meetings were, but people don't come. And I'm so excited to hear that you went, because I think that when you have that opportunity, you'll come back again, because you do get to hear the decisions. You kind of understand the framework of what's going on. And we want our citizens to have their voices heard, even if they're coming in to give a comment and they just want to poke in and out. It's important that we have our community members visiting our meetings.
And I would also say, and this is back to a point that you talked about in class, Sarah, now that the pandemic is hopefully in our rear view, it actually, and I hate to say this because obviously it's so tragic for so many, but there were some positives that came out of it. One of the things is that, the Mechanicsburg Borough Council actually sort of got into the tech game and started streaming their borough council meetings.
Yeah, I was pleasantly surprised. If you're going to talk about a benefit of a pandemic, pushing us into the tech world was definitely it. We've been able to broadcast our meetings easily on our Facebook. We can share it on YouTube. It's on our borough page. And that gives the ease of information for people, because I know people's schedules are busy and sometimes they don't have the availability to come in to a meeting on a Tuesday night. But if we broadcast it, they can at least watch it. And I love that. So, post-pandemic, I hope that we continue doing those things for ease of information.
And like I said to you in class, I mean, anyone can broadcast right from their phone. All you need is a tripod. They're like $15. Like, let's do this, And you want to talk about accessibility of information. That's how you're really going to get people involved at the grassroots level. If they're not necessarily able to attend these meetings, at least make them accessible for them to engage with somehow, right?
Absolutely. People really need the information at their fingertips. We're busy, we move fast, they don't have time to look for it. So having that live streamed has made a big difference in the availability of information.
What are your thoughts there, Nash?
So it's just surprising to me that we don't have as many people that come into this sort of thing, because I can name off the top of my head probably about 100 people with a strong political opinion, and yet the tools that they really need to be able to affect their community are right in front of them, and we just don't see them using it. It's honestly fascinating. I mean, when I was looking for the building, I legitimately drove by because it's like, there has to be a bigger building than this one. There's no way. We have to have more space. There's got to be more people attending these meetings. No, it's hardly anybody.
Well, and it's a famous saying that goes around that, people will post their disdain for government.
Hashtag activism.
Yes. But they have not engaged in the proper process. So coming in, talking to the borough manager, even making a phone call to the office, they would rather post about it than be active in their participation to get change. So I encourage people, when they come to me with a complaint, I give them the procedure and who to talk to. I can't fix all of their problems, but I can tell them who can fix those problems. And a lot of times those public comments, they're public. And so we're required to address them. We may not be able to answer them that night, but we go back in a thoughtful manner and go back and adjust their concerns. So I encourage everyone, get to a meeting, because you're missing out if you're not happy with where you're living.
You've got borough council, you've got town council, you've got township council. There are so many different ways on a local level that people can get involved. And that's what's so interesting. So as somebody who teaches social media and a media and politics class, really what we see is these people who are going online and airing their grievances, whether it's national politics, local politics, and that's not what this podcast is all about. So we're not even going to touch on that. What we are going to touch on is the amount of people posting their thought processes on social media and not taking very simple steps like potentially going to a borough council meeting or even reaching out to a borough council member to address their problems that they're having on a local or even a state or even at a national level.
I remember the legwork that I needed to do for figuring out what I had to do this meeting. I did in class. I literally did it in the middle of your class.
And that's one of the things that was really interesting, because I'd ask everybody to do this, and we took, I think, 20 minutes out of a class? And
Hardly.
everybody was so surprised how easy it was to find all of the information on where and when these meetings are. And it's funny because we don't initially think about getting... So much of the conversation nationally is about the office of the president, But really, and you made this point, and I make this point all the time, really it's our state and local representatives that have the biggest impact directly on our lives. And the fact that, borough council members have all of these hugely important things, certainly in the town of Mechanicsburg, but wherever all of you are from, these councils have a lot of say and a lot of power. And unfortunately, if you are not able to reach out and connect with these people to allow your voice to be heard, unfortunately, business is still going to go on. And you can say whatever you want on social media, but that's not going to move the needle.
Yeah, if you have a problem, an issue, a thought, a concern, and you don't voice it, you're missing out on opportunities, because our agenda is the agenda of our community and our neighbors. So you have to help set that. We come in, there's 7 of us, but each of us come in from a different perspective. We don't have your perspective. And if you don't voice it, no one else is going to. So I encourage everyone, find someone local and just go in and listen and have your voice heard, because we can't change things at the federal level, but we can change things at the local and county and state level.
Now, obviously, we're past the primary, and but really, I kind of just want to leave with this is, again, not bringing up any partisan issues here, but let's just talk about the importance of voting. Even in an election in 2020 that arguably could go down as one of the most important elections in modern era, we still only had about 60% of the population in the United States voting. Why is that?
I think that people do not think their vote counts. And we joked about this earlier. I won an election with 16 votes. Every vote counts. You need to go out there and make your voice heard, because if you don't, someone else's vote counts. And that just, you're going into the negative when you're not out there. I've worked the polls for probably the last 12 years, and I'm surprised at how many of my neighbors I don't see coming out to vote, or they're only coming out to the presidential elections. So I'm that person who'll pick up my phone and say, "Get out here, Mark, it's time to vote," because you shape your community, and if you don't vote, someone else is shaping your community.
Sarah, I'd like to ask, what sort of efforts are you making to increase voter turnout in a lot of areas? It's really a difficult task, obviously, we've discussed. So aside from going on these podcasts, what sort of efforts are you making?
So we do a lot of voter registration and a lot of Facebook reminders to people. We set up booths at the libraries and different businesses, because I think a lot of times people aren't sure if they're registered. So we can check your registration status. If you want to change political parties, you can do it online. So that really is the effort. And I know that with the technology that we have, there's a lot of robocalling to get out the vote. So if you were fortunate to be skipped on those robocalls for the presidential election, I'm sure they're coming your way for the next round of elections.
I think that, again, the point I try to make is it is so important to affect what we can have the most impact on us in terms of the electoral process. Of course, it's important to understand and do research on your national politicians, but you made a really interesting point earlier that there are people that, was it cross-list that you said? Was that the point? And I was actually blown away by that. Can you just tell us a little bit more about what that means?
Sure. So when you go to vote for your local officials, you have to be very careful on who you're voting for. So judges can cross-file. So they may not be with the political party that you think you're voting for. You need to do your research to make sure that the judge or the school board official is actually going to represent your views. The other thing is that there's a little trickery that can go on. So if you go to vote locally, you'll see there's a lot of empty slots that people are not running for office. So if you have someone from a opposing political side, they can do a write-in campaign and have their name with both political affiliations. So I always say, do your research, know your candidates. Maybe they are a good person and you're going to vote for them and they're not representing your political affiliation. affiliation, but you should know who you're voting for. And your local officials are your most accessible officials to get to know. They're at a coffee shop down the street. They're having a yard party. They're there trying to talk to you and listen to you. So go meet your local officials before you vote.
And one of the things that we talked about, Nash, in class was an article that came out that said 67% of people who voted in the 2020 election voted straight party ticket. What impact does that have?
Well, it takes the vote away from the candidate. You're voting just for a party. You're not looking at the individual. You're not looking at, maybe they're, one political affiliation for one issue. And if you vote against them, you're not really knowing the character of your local official. And I think you need to do your research. It's unfortunate when people go in and vote one party without knowing who they're voting for.
Well, Sarah, I just wanted to thank you very much. And obviously, it's not until you said 2024 that you're running again. So you got a little bit of a reprieve in terms of the vote, the electoral process. But honestly, I just want to thank you so much, not only for being on the podcast today, but you took time out of your day to come and chat with the class. And honestly, I was so happy how engaged they were. They all seemed to really, really take to you, and I appreciate so much everything that you do, not only for my town where I reside, but also for your advocacy of getting people out to vote. So I just want to thank you so much for all of those things.
Well, thank you. And hopefully we'll have a couple of your students running for office someday.
And they know where to turn if they ever want to. So, and Nash, thank you for being so engaged. You were certainly one of the most inquisitive in class today, so I appreciate that very much. And you've always been very interested in political science and these types of things. So, hey, maybe it's the first of many Borough Council meetings you go to.
Oh, I'd say that there's a good chance in that. This project was a lot of fun. I think it's really important that we continue to get students in touch with their local governments. I think it's at large just going to make us a more involved society. So I really appreciate this sort of project.
Absolutely. All right, well, that's going to do it for this episode of the Nightly News Podcast. I want to thank Mechanicsburg Borough Council member Sara Agerton for being here today. Also want to thank Nightly News Secretary Nash McCumsey. This is Professor Paul Miller, and we'll see you again next time on the Nightly News Podcast.